In this episode, I interviewed Ryan Matonis. He's a SaaS entrepreneur and email marketing guru. In this episode, we talk about all kinds of different things, like what's a minimum viable product when you're starting out, how to create software that's consistently getting better without you having to improve it, how to leverage email marketing, cold outreach, things like that. Really just anyone who has a SaaS business or is interested in the field that's software as a service, this is a good episode for you. He is so insightful, so interesting. His two companies are Lead Engines and API Exchange. Links will be in whatever you're watching this on. And he's just such an interesting guy to follow on LinkedIn. Lots of insightful and funny posts. That's where we met, actually. He's one of my favorite people that I follow. You will certainly enjoy him if you are in the know about these subjects. Anyways, I really enjoyed chatting to him. Thanks to Ryan for being on the show, and hopefully we'll get to do it again soon. Enjoy the episode, everyone.
Yeah, got another client signed up like right before got on this, and just doing some customer support requests. Other than that, it was a pretty slow day.
All right. Well, we're recording. Let's get rolling here. So, Ryan, I'm so curious. I've been wanting to talk to you for so long. I love following you on LinkedIn. I'd love to know kind of what your path to get to this point looks like. And you can start as far back as you want, but I saw, like, when I was looking through your resume, it starts with like a few internships and then it jumps right into CTO. So I guess, did you know right off the bat that you wanted to be a founder, or what did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, so I guess I got into startups because when I was doing my internship at Northrop Grumman, I worked there it was about 6 months, and I think I got paid, it was somewhere between like $30,000 and $40,000. And I saved the company about $1.5 million by their own accounting. And that was before they distributed what I made to like all their other factories. So in the long run, it was like tens of millions of dollars. And they made me an offer for, I think it was $70,000 a year. I think it was a little less than that. And I was kind of like, like I'm doing something wrong here, like I should have, like I built the software for them, and I was kind of looking at it as like, well, I should be the one that was taking the software to the other factories, and I should be going to their competitors, right? All these other companies that are doing this exact same thing. The difference between me making $70,000 a year here and me making millions of dollars is whether or not I own the software I create.
Interesting. So you went from that internship to being the CTO, right? So of a different company. So
Yeah.
Were you a co-founder in that role?
So I came in, I was like the 7th or 8th employee at that company, and I took over the tech leadership because of my experience having I led the project at Northrop that saved a ton of money.
Right.
And I guess that was more leadership than whatever the other current CTO had. And that being said, I became the CEO of that company, and then it failed. So I guess it's a success
Happens
on my
to
resume.
the best.
Yeah, happens to the best, right? It's probably my fault too.
It always is.
Right. You have to tell yourself that, right? You have to be like, okay, there were things that I could have done differently. Like the failure was because of my decisions, even if it was like, hey, we hired the wrong guy, that's still, your fault. So hopefully,
Right.
I look at it that way. Hopefully my other co-founders, they look at it that way too. They think it's their fault, not my fault. But
one can only hope.
yeah, so I became the CTO of that company just because I guess I was willing to jump in, and I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, well, this is something that they need my immediate skills. It was designing a hardware product and then building a software that would go on the cloud and then be interacted with through an app. And I was like, well, I know how to do all that. But what I really wanted to get from it wasn't I didn't expect that to be $1 million company. I expected to learn how to be an entrepreneur.
And do you feel like you accomplished that in that role?
Yeah, I feel like probably the day I quit that company was the day I graduated from learning how to be, an entrepreneur. So okay, we're gonna go try to be an entrepreneur.
That's awesome. So then, was Lead Engines the next thing to come off your path?
No, so at that point I became much better at failing very quickly, and so then I also started doing freelance software development. And so I kind of I told myself the next thing, if I wanted to learn how to build an app, or I wanted to learn how to build a SaaS product that was going to be something that you could market and sell and own, I might as well start by building them for people that already know how to do that and like learning by osmosis, right? Because I just learned from like the people around me. Like if you ever saw my grades, I guess that would be apparent. Um, and it's so I started building software like SaaS applications for
Mm.
founders that were like non-tech people and were trying to build their own SaaS. And I was learning a lot from them about like, oh, you have to do like the marketing funnel. Like, that's a thought like as a developer, like you never think of is like, oh, the tutorial and like the onboarding, like, oh, they'll just do that after they buy it, right? Like, yeah. And I guess that was kind of where I learned like people will pay you, 10 grand, 20 grand, right? 5 figures to build their app, that other people, spend like 49 bucks a month to use. And it's kind of a sales and a marketing game in SaaS, like
When
sales.
you say that, do you mean like it's a sales and a marketing game to acquire the customers?
I mean, it's a sales and marketing game to be successful in SaaS because
Mm.
you can either build software for a company and they'll pay you like your rate to build software. And if you're good at building software, you can easily get 100, 200 bucks an hour to build software. But you might spend months, building a software that you're going to sell people a license to for like 49 bucks. And if you don't have somebody on your team that like knows how to sell and market it, then you're just an underpaid developer,
Fair enough. Okay, so you're doing freelance work where you're developing these products for other SaaS companies and other applications. And then what happened? What happened next? Where did that take you?
So that took me into learning how to do sales and marketing in order to like, market this software creation service. And that was where I first really started tinkering with marketing automation because, if you're a developer and anytime you get into anything and somebody tells you there might be a way to automate it, that's kind of like where you start. Um,
Hmm.
so I guess, we probably automate too early. Like we automated things too early. Like I think we were sending automated emails before we even sent like real human emails asking like an ideal customer if they might actually be interested in something like this.
Huh.
We just like, skipped right to it. Um, but yeah, so I did, a bunch of freelance development. And then the way lead engines actually happened, it came out of the freelance software development. Um, and I was learning a lot about like MVPs and like how to build an MVP and like all this stuff and like what is an MVP. And I think the way I built lead engines, it came out of a realization that an MVP has pretty much nothing to do with the product. It's like a mix
Huh.
of your customer segment, your marketing channel, your value proposition, and your relationship with the customer. I think that's like the whatever Andreessen or that's how he describes it. Um,
So, just for anybody listening, MVP stands for minimum viable product. Um, Ryan, why don't you give us kind of like a difference between an MVP and a prototype? That might help people kind of understand the concept if they're not familiar.
yeah, so an MVP is like the minimum list of features and values that your customer needs to buy, um, and a marketing channel that you're marketing it to them through. So an MVP could be something like taking a white label product and then marketing it through Google Ads under a new brand and like explaining the features differently. And then people are buying it, and that proves that it's like minimum viable in the marketplace. It's MVP is a description of the product in the marketplace, and it generally relates to price and customer where people find it. A prototype is just something that you built that does a thing like an engineering scientifically valid thing. Um, I guess a good example would be the company I was a CTO of. It was a health wear, like a wearable device. The first prototype was an exoskeleton airbag thing that supposedly old people would wear, and then if they fell, it would like deploy the airbags. And it's like, okay, that's a prototype, but that's probably not something that people are like buying and like wearing in their everyday life, and it's not gonna be. So it's not really an MVP. And the actual MVP ended up being just like a wearable device that would collect data, and it was like totally different. It was the difference between something for when you crash a car and detecting that you're going to crash your car and telling you to like brake or whatever. Um, that's kind of tangential, but yeah, MVP can be something that people buy that doesn't even exist yet, and a prototype, can be something you built that nobody would ever buy.
Okay, so that feeds really nicely into this question I was going to bring up. So, we talked about this over the phone. I think it was last week or the week before, you made this post on LinkedIn. I was like, it was a poll. It was, which is the closest to a real MVP? A built product with 0 users, a landing page with 80 signups, a single pre-sale for $97, or a mock-up and $25,000 in VC backing. So A, where'd you get the inspiration to post that? What made you think to do that? And B, what's your answer? I think I know.
I think I already gave away what my answer is. The inspiration, I think it was just like going on Reddit and just reading like all these posts from what I call like cargo cult entrepreneurs. And I don't know if your users know what a cargo cult is, but basically like way back in the day, it was after World War II, they were indigenous people living in the Pacific, and they watched the Allies, go out on the island and start waving stuff around and wear funny hats. And then these planes came and they just delivered everything you could ever need. And, being a society that didn't have that technology and they didn't really understand how any of that worked, they thought that what the people were doing caused the planes to come, which is like kind of correct. It's just not the whole picture. And so they created like a religion around like they would make these, like the fake things that you would wave with an airplane and like fake radios. And like they're basically trying to summon the planes to get the planes to come deliver a bunch of MREs, meals ready to eat, so that, they don't have to keep doing the hunter-gatherer thing. Or I guess I don't know where they're at right now. But entrepreneurs kind of do the same thing. They fill out, their business, whatever, like with the Secretary of State, and they're like, a CEO, oh, that's me. And they're like, bam, I'm a CEO. And they're like, we need marketing. And they go on, like, they make a Twitter and they post like, hey, come like buy this shit. And like, oh, we have marketing. Like, okay, cool. Like, we need a CTO. Like, what's he going to do? Oh, he's going to do the HTML and the CSS. And they kind of like trick themselves into like thinking that they have like, oh, I have an MVP. And it's like, what's your MVP? Oh, it's this landing page that got 80 signups. And it's like, okay, that's not really an MVP. Or they'll be like, oh, we built our MVP. Like, how do we show it to people and get people to buy it? And it's like, well, let me, tell you like what an MVP is. So it just kind of came from like people thinking they had an MVP when they didn't really have an MVP. And I tried to pick apart like what are the pieces of an MVP? Because if you have all those things, right? If you have any two of those things, if you have 80 signups in a product, you have an MVP, right? If you have...
Because one half is like validation that there's product market fit, and then the other half is a product.
Yeah. Or if you have like a pre-sale and you have investor backing and a mock-up, like that sounds like an MVP to me, Like,
yeah, and so I think my thinking aligns with you that the single pre-sale, does a lot. And I also think it's closest to an MVP because it's like, someone just paid me, I need to build this thing. So that's gonna accelerate things quite a bit as well. But, I also thought that the venture capital option was a good one too. And I wanted to hear what you think about this. But, a mock-up is way less on the product side, right? Because it's quite easy to build a mock-up in most cases. But venture capital funding is probably the hardest thing on that list to get, I would argue.
Yeah.
And that probably requires some level of market fit. So I thought that was a close second place. What do you think?
So I would say that one, what you really have is a smart guy who is willing to bet money that your mock-up would be an MVP if you built it and marketed it.
Okay.
He thinks it's an MVP, and he's willing to put his money where his mouth is.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that one's also a good candidate. Actually, A and B, the 80 signups in the product were the most popular picks.
Were they really?
Yeah, and then most of the angel investors picked C. They weren't really interested in other people's investments, I guess.
Huh. I guess it's easier to downplay that if you are one.
I guess, yeah. Or they've seen, hey, buy this. Oh, I think I won't. And then, goes under. Like, oh, glad I didn't buy it.
So how early in the process of developing the product I guess for lead engines, let's talk about it in a practical terms. Like when you're actually building your product and, you're a technical guy, you were probably pretty focused on the actual development of the product itself. What percentage of your brain power was going towards product market fit, given that you'd already had all this experience in your past, learning from these other entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So, I tried to change my perspective on like the way I was thinking about technology. And by the time, the lead engines idea was born, which I guess we'll get to after this, I was at the point where it was like, look, I'm not going to build my plan around the specific technology because I know that when people start talking about things, like they're like, I have this idea. I can immediately tell you like, well, you would do this and you would do this and then you would get this API and you would put, like I already know how to build it. Like you can show me an app and like I already know how to build it. And so at that point it was like, I guess pre-idea, I wasn't really thinking so much about what the technology would be. I was trying to follow like a couple rules. One of them was I wanted to make a product that if somebody bought it and they had success, they would just come back and buy more. Like they're buying money at a discount. So like Google ads, if you run Google ads to a landing page, you spend $100, you get $600 profit out of it. Like, what are you going to do with that $600? You're going to go buy ads.
Buy 6 times as much ads. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to do something in the marketing automation space because it was kind of like, look, I can build a marketing department and I can build a product, or like I can build a product that does marketing, and like I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone every time I wake up and decide all I'm doing all day is programming. Yeah.
So lead engines, for people who are either watching this on like a social media clip or don't know, lead engines is a platform. Why don't I let you describe it actually before I butcher it?
Yeah, Lead Engines is a B2B data platform, and it's a place where people buy sales data and they automatically upload it to their cold outreach campaigns.
Awesome. So do you use cold outreach to market lead engines?
I use cold outreach to market everything I do. I'm not really any good at Google Ads. I think we just started turning a profit on Google Ads. But anytime I come up with any old random idea, I'll throw up a landing page with WordPress and I'll start sending out some cold email.
Wow. So what is like the sales funnel like for something like lead engines? Like, are you actually like talking to the customers and selling it, or is it more like a low touch SaaS sale where it's like they just make the purchase online?
It's a little bit of both. Which when we first did it, it was very high touch, and I guess we'll kind of get into that. I'm trying to make it low touch, and what I'm doing now is people will sign up, and then I'll call them when they sign up, and I'll be like, oh yeah, let's hop on Zoom. I'll set it up for you. I'll show you how it all works, right? And they're like, oh, this is cool. And then I get in there and I use my expertise. I get it integrated with whatever they're doing. I set it up, the best way I know how. And then it's like, oh, in order for it to start running, you're going to have to go ahead and put in your credit card. Like it wasn't really a discovery call. It wasn't really a demo. Like it's set up. It's ready to go. Like, do you want it or not?
That's pretty cool. Have you put any thought into hiring someone else to do that role, or is that something that you wouldn't want to delegate to someone else? Or what target are you moving toward? What other model would you like?
We've tried hiring people to do it. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't. We had more success actually with doing like webinar style sales. And then funneling everybody into like a content class that was done by a third-party content creator. And so what that tells me is just like I don't have enough content and like educational content, which is, I know like I need more stuff on the platform that tells people how to use it to like the best of their ability. But for me, the reason I don't want to move away from those calls where I'm helping people set it up is because that's my experience with the customer. All of our sales, all of our marketing, all of our feature development is based on like what people tell me in those phone calls. So if I can get someone on Zoom and I can get them screen sharing and I can get them setting up the tool, then I can see, the pitfalls, right? And then I can take a note, and then at night I can go and I can like come up with a feature that's going to fix that and just deploy it on live. Wow.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. Because we keep alluding to it, let's go back to the point where you actually started this company.
Okay.
We're going a little out of order here. That's my fault, but let's keep rolling with it.
Okay. So the way I started Lead Engines, I was actually doing software development, and I was aware of these things that I told you about where I wanted a marketing automation product that people could just buy more of. And somebody hired me, or they reached out to talk about hiring me to build them a dashboard for their lead generation agency to combine a bunch of third-party tools to build email lists. And the downside was they only had $1,500. That was their budget. And there was like no wiggle room on that. And that's not really enough to like build a solid dashboard. Like it might be if you're just like getting started, but I was doing a lot of freelance software development at that point. But I liked the idea, right? That was like, hey, this checks all my boxes for a product that I'm looking to sell to people. And they had already had a lot of like the algorithm figured out. Like they already knew where to go pull data from and like what to clean it with and all these things and what the steps were and all that. Um, and so I told him, I was like, look, Andy, $1,500, that's not enough to build this thing. Let alone maintain it, right? Like if I hand this off to you, are you gonna pay me to maintain it? Like what if you need upgrades? What if you need changes? Like you can't afford to buy this thing. Can you afford to own this thing? And he's kind of like, no. He was kind of realizing like he wasn't, he didn't have enough budget to buy this thing. And so I told him, I was like, look, I'll build this for you and I'll sell you a lifetime license for $1,500. But I'm going to own the products. And that means you're going to get, the exact same software dashboard. You're not going to have to pay to maintain it. I'll maintain it for free. And you don't have to pay to upgrade it. I'm going to upgrade it. And I'm going to keep upgrading it because I'm going to be selling it to other people. And so you're going to invest the same amount of money. All these hidden costs are going to go away. And at the end of it, it'll be a better product. And if I fail, then I'll give you the product. He said, okay, like, why not?
Huh. Like rent to own for software.
Yeah, it was pre-sale license for the thing that you actually thought like you needed built. But the reason it worked, like, look, if you're a company and you're looking to get a custom software dashboard built for something that you're only going to use internally, that's like the biggest possible red flag that anybody can possibly wave that it's time to come over here and build a B2B SaaS product.
Yeah. That it literally is that single pre-sale.
Yeah. They didn't know where to buy it. They had looked to buy it and they needed it so badly that they were willing to pay me $1,500 to build it, which is more than, I guess, like a Salesforce license for a year or something. I didn't realize how much SaaS even sold for, like B2B worlds. Like $1,500 in B2B, people, like if it has no features, like they'll still buy it. It's, I don't know. But you know this, I'm sure, running an agency.
I do.
Yeah.
I've definitely paid for things that I didn't need.
Yeah.
I've been on.
You know why that is though? Why software is so expensive?
Why is that?
Like if you look at like a sales development rep, and the tools they use Salesforce, which is I think $120 a month. Their Zoom Info license is a couple $100 a month. Their autoresponders are maybe $100 a month. And you're paying, their auto dialer a couple $100 a month. What are you paying them? Like $5,000? And it's like the most expensive tool in his sales stack is his time, right? So it's not like there's a budget for software. Nobody's like, I'm gonna go try to spend $10,000 on software, but they're already spending a ton of money on paying a human being to do this. So that's where the crazy prices for software come from in B2B.
I think it's the same thing with all pricing models. It's just value based.
Yeah.
Like when you're thinking about things from perspective of like hiring a person, it's the same thing. It's like, is this person going to allow me to free up my time so I can grow the business in a different way, or whatever other reason it is? It's easier to it's better for the business and it's better for you if they're pricing themselves in a way that allows them to continue to grow.
That's true too. Yeah. Like you're investing in them making future investments, and we charge more than other companies that sell you lead lists. But if you have an issue, you can, hit us up in the chat and it's me and I'll build a feature. Right. And people like that. And I think that's a big, reason that people buy from us.
So another post you made on LinkedIn, and this will be the last one. We won't just be reading from your LinkedIn the whole episode. But,
okay.
Another one you made, I think this one's a little older. I could be wrong though. You said the top 3 sources of value and growth in a startup are number 3 sales, number 2 marketing, and then number 1 recruiting.
Yeah.
And then you signed it off, sincerely a software engineer.
Yeah.
Which I think makes a statement in and of itself of what's not on that list.
Yeah.
And I think that ties in really well to this whole conversation we've been having. Why do you rank, the one I'm really curious about is recruiting. Why did that beat sales and marketing? That kind of seems like it's coming out of left field based on everything else that we've talked about today.
Yeah. I mean, recruiting is the source of sales and marketing, right? So you can find, you can go to our startups or our find a founder, whatever Reddit community. That's what the R is. You can find sales and marketing consultants all day. Right. Consultants.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like just having the right person on your team that has this skills that you need and like, the energy to go and go and go. Sometimes there's times when you just meet someone and it's like you just connect and just right away, like there's a ton of value being added. And that comes from recruiting. If you weren't spending time looking for more talent, like to join your team, you're pretty much just limited to your own talents. So I spent, a year or two trying to sell and market lead engines for the sake of learning how to sell and market. And then I found this guy, his name is Mark, that he owns a affiliate marketing company. He ran a webinar for us and he promoted it to his email list, and he did more sales in a day than I ever did in a quarter. And I think that's right around, I think, when I posted that, or that's at least what inspired that post. It was like, wow, if I, had dialed in on this recruiting skill and I had gotten good at finding the people that could solve, identifying these problems and solving these problems, that's probably more valuable than even being good at learning how to solve them myself.
Absolutely. That makes sense to me. So I guess at what stage does that shift, right? Because in order to hire, you have to have money or funding. So either revenue or funding, essentially. At what point does it shift for you from presumably getting your first sales to recruiting being the top driver of growth?
Yeah, so I guess there's different outcomes from recruiting than putting someone on a W-2. Recruiting can mean just like, I guess, procurement, like you're going around looking at agencies and you're hiring talent,
Okay.
or like recruiting channel partnerships. So like with lead engines, we have 17 integrations now, and I pretty heavily like recruit, people to join, quote unquote, the lead engines team, which is, more like a network, I guess, at this point, from those groups. So I think probably the time to start recruiting, if you have an idea or like you have a product or you have an audience or you have like any of the components of product market fit and you don't know how to get the other ones, it could make sense to start recruiting right away and look for a co-founder. But I guess right away, like I almost want to say like don't bother with recruiting, and then when you meet like the perfect person, like you should hire them immediately. But like where does that come from? That comes from recruiting, right? So if you need a co-founder, you should probably start recruiting them immediately. If you need talent, like, I would go with agencies before hiring employees, because I did, a bunch of times I hired sales development reps and I tried to like train them, and, the deaf leading the blind kind of thing, because I've never worked a sales development job. And like, they're like, what do I do? And I'm like, I don't know. That's what I hired you for. And then one of them's like, dude,
I've made that exact same mistake, by the way.
yeah. So it's like, oh, I'm just going to hire an agency that like, that's what they do. And,
Yeah.
and they're like, what do you need? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, oh, perfect. Okay,
That's
cool.
what we teach. Perfect.
Yeah. So recruiting, buying. Yeah.
Cool. Another thing that you mentioned to me once was technical debt versus technical equity. Did I get those terms right?
Yeah.
Okay. I would love it if you would explain that concept to people who haven't heard of it first, and then explain technical debt and then technical equity, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, yeah. So technical debt is a well-established term, and it generally is the cost to replace an engineer if one leaves. So say the guy that built your product, he goes and quits, he gets a job at Google or whatever, and you hire somebody else, and you have to pay them for 3 months before they even know how to change your code base. That's your technical debt. It's probably best described like as a liability. Technical equity is something that I made up, and it's pretty much just negative technical debt, or it's like the opposite of technical debt in a sense. And it comes from using third-party tools. So I'm going to give you an example and then explain it. A couple of years ago, I made a phone number through Twilio where you could call it, you could start talking in any language, and it would come out in my side as English. I could respond in English, and then it would come back out in whatever language you were speaking. And it's like, wow, that sounds really complicated. And it's like, yeah, but it was just Twilio and Google Translate talking to each other. And it's just through the APIs. I didn't even have a server. They were just pointed at each other. And that means that for the last few years, Google has been going out and they've been making their translations better. And Twilio has been working really hard to make their voice lines better. And because, I didn't have to update anything, it was all done through APIs. It all runs on its own. Over the last couple of years, the translations have gotten more accurate. They've gotten faster. The language sounds more human. I didn't spend any time. I didn't spend any money. But because I was using third-party tools and their product was constantly getting better, mine was constantly getting better too. And So technical equity really comes from choosing to use third-party products that are always improving, which goes back to what you said about paying for, that's a value that's something that people pay for, compared to like building it in-house and just building up all this technical debt.
So a good example of that would be when the guy who hired you to make lead engines, essentially, when he offloaded ownership of that, he actually gained technical equity.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why equity is probably the wrong word, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I think I came up with that word.
It's the opposite of debt, though.
It is, yeah. It's
because he would have been in the exact problem that you solved for him was he couldn't afford to have the product that he wanted. It would have been too much technical debt. So it is equity in that sense.
Yeah, and my deal with him, it was no different from any other software development deal, like as a freelancer to build a dashboard for a company. It was just, the financials were slightly different. It's just, so if you're already doing, you're already building dashboards, right? You can look for this and you can do this.
So what about like from a product standpoint, right? Like doing it like for yourself to have that phone number that can, that's like not a product you're marketing and selling, presumably. And same thing with your client, I guess, who hired you to create lead engines. That's for his own internal use. He's not marketing that product. But would you ever use third-party software to create your product in the name of technical equity?
Yeah. So with lead engines, we advertise it as a B2B contact database. We actually don't have a database. We're subscribed to a bunch of different third-party databases that do, like A to B and then B to C and then C to D. And then lead engines is just like the A to G pipeline, right? So we're built on, I think it's probably about 10 different tools. And then it's, that's lead engines, and then it integrates with like 18 other things. And so those tools are always getting better. Like our email deliverability has gone from like 90% to 96%, and I haven't actually done anything.
That's pretty cool.
It just happened like for free over like 2 years.
Wow. You've managed to eliminate your R&D costs.
Yeah, it eliminated R&D costs. We were able to raise the price, right? It's more valuable. And yeah, there was a lot of benefits that came from it.
So would you extend this term to things like the example that you were giving when we were talking about MVPs, where like, you just take a white label product and you start running Google ads to it? Would that still count? Is that in your wheelhouse of good idea technical equity?
Yeah, that still counts, right? Because the company that makes the product you're white labeling, like they're not marketing, they're just building it. So anything you pay them is going towards, developing, or not all of it, but
It's kind of like the tech equivalent of like a referral network. Like you just build these referral partnerships and they bring you the business and they get better and better at that and it comes on your end. And then, so you've kind of got double-ended on this sweet spot here where you've got your referral, your lead engines family bringing you these leads. And then you've got, the tech partners that are building the software that you use. You've really got a business that's truly more automated than the average business.
Yeah, I mean, it's way more automated. It's like I don't have any employees. It's like 30 to 50 grand a month in SaaS sales.
Wow.
And I'm like, it's like part-time. And it's all automated. It's because every time for the last 3 years when I need to send someone an email because their payment didn't process, right? I don't send them an email saying, hey, your payment didn't process. I go into Zapier and I find the Zap that, hey, this payment didn't process, and I build it into a Zap and then I send it to them. And then, from now on, right, when somebody's payment doesn't process, it takes me a little longer. It's Zapier, so it's only a couple minutes. But every single time anything has ever happened, like, hey, we get, we built this email list and there's all these misters and doctors and LLCs and like all this crap in it. I went out and I bought some AI stuff that cleans all that, cleans it all out, and now nobody's ever going to deal with that again. It took me 2 or 3 days to fix it, and like look through different products and test it all. And that's like one little tiny thing, but because all I focused on was, making sure it was 100% automated, we finally got there.
How much of this did you plan out from the start, and how much of it was just opportunity plus you as a person equals this outcome?
Oh, just all B. Yeah.
Okay.
Like if I were to do it again, I would have it all figured out, right? I would have it all figured out, even beyond like what we've even talked about. Like we can go into like lifetime deals and stuff like that. I could tell you what I would do if I was going to do it all again.
Let's
right?
hear it. Yeah, tell me.
I would go back to doing the SaaS freelance development thing, and I would just be using that to look for the opportunities. When I find the opportunity, I would sell the lifetime deal. I would build it, and then I would immediately deploy just a lifetime deal strategy on like Product Hunt or like through affiliates and stuff. Because you find, okay, people are willing to pay this much money for this product, right? You have the MVP, they're paying you $1,500 for the license before it even exists. You sell to the person, you build it, and then you go to Product Hunt and you promote your lifetime deal for your new product. Guess how much it costs? It's $1,500.
I don't know what Product Hunt is. I think I'm missing a key
it's
integration here.
So Product Hunt is a platform. It's kind of like Indiegogo or Kickstarter.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, everybody that when they think SaaS, they think subscription, and they think
right.
like I'm going to sell it $50 a month, $100 a month. But if you're selling subscriptions, like monthly subscriptions, it can be harder to grow because your payback period can be several months. So say you charge $50 a month, your customers on average stay for a year, you're making $600 a customer, right? If it costs you $200 to get a customer, that means every 4 months you're able to turn over, your marketing money again and get a new customer. If you're selling lifetime deals, right? Your payback period is like when they buy it. It's like instant. And then you just go back to selling lifetime deals. And the reason you can sell lifetime deals is because the way you sold this thing in the first place was a lifetime deal.
That's interesting. It kind of like removes the assumption of what your lifetime value of the customer is going to be. It's a given.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then, once you do that, you get 100 lifetime sales, and then you have all your money for advertising and marketing. And so that's what we did, right? We did the lifetime deals, and that built us up the capital that we needed to start running pay-per-click ads.
Did you ever do venture capital? Or did you ever raise money for this?
I never tried to raise money for this. It's always been bootstrapped. And what I did instead of raising funding was I offered done-for-you services, like agency-style services. Going back, magic number, $1,500. There's something in the B2B world you can charge $1,500 for anything. But we were doing done for you cold email campaigns, and we would send them, 3,000 emails, $1,500. And even when the product barely worked, all it could do is build email lists. There was no useful user interface. This meant that there was constantly being money coming back, into the value proposition of the product.
Interesting. So I think a lot of people, when they're trying to start a company, particularly non-technical people, I would say, but a lot of people, when they're trying to start a company, they really put a lot of emphasis on the pre-stage, like the planning, making a business plan, putting together, I don't know if a pitch deck falls into that same category because it's kind of centered around raising funding. But what do you think about that? Do you think there's any merit to a business plan?
Yeah, I think no plan ever survives first contact with the customer, I guess.
So does that make it useless, or do you think there's still a value in it?
I mean, I'm sure that if they know more about business and sales and marketing than I do, I'm sure their plans are useful. Like when I started Lead Engines, if I was spending my time planning, I don't even know what the hell I would have thought I knew, So I just did it.
Fair enough, man. And that's another reason why I really like the $97 in pre-sale option to go way back, just because it eliminates that variable for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's for developers especially. It's like, if your expertise isn't like sales and marketing, then that's where you should start, right? Like if you're the king of sales and marketing, then you should probably start by going out and finding like a tech person and making sure that whatever you're going to sell is going to be feasible.
Tackle the thing you're most afraid of first.
Yeah. And then just line it up where it's like, hey, if I can figure out like this product market fit thing and all I have to do is build the product, like for me, that's like a straight shot home, Like for you, that's probably like, well, I can, the product market fit thing. I don't know how to build it.
Right.
So start with what you're bad at, because if you start with what you're good at, you'll mislead yourself into thinking that, you'll get trapped by the things you don't know.
That's super true. I think that's such a common trap for people to fall in when they're starting something new, is that they'll focus all of their energy on the thing that they already know how to do instead of what you're proposing. And I think that's where people get stuck. Um, so what in that light, since you were the technical guy, how do you go about getting demand generation going for your company? Like, I know the lifetime value model was one that you wish you had done, but how would you get started
Yeah.
if you were to do it?
I mean, with the lead engine story, right? The demand generation, it like fell into my lap. They hit me up and they said, weird thing. They hit me up and they were like, "Hey, we need this product built. We have this much money. We need this software to exist." So I guess that was like my first hint, of the demand generation. And like if you were looking for something to build and you were gonna start with demand generation, that might be a good place to start. Is just being a freelance developer, because then you get to hear like all those amazing ideas.
I think I meant more of like, how did you I got your first sale down, but like
Got it. Yeah.
After that, how did you turn it into like a systematized, I got leads coming in every day?
Yeah. It was, using the product to do cold email. So the product itself is a cold email automation platform. And my logic was going back to killing two birds with one stone, product and marketing. I was setting up my own cold email campaigns. I was using it to market for myself. People would get on a demo. I would just show them the results I was getting for myself. I was like, yeah, I don't really have customers yet, but I built this thing and it was like last month and got me 20 meetings, and I don't know how to sell it, but you want to buy it?
It's like its own proof of concept.
Yeah, they're like, where can you show me a demo? It's, you're in the demo, right? It's and so a couple people like bought on from that. They're like, this guy that doesn't know anything, he got a meeting with me. Like, what's this thing he's using?
So what? I just to talk about cold email, because I'm a bit of a marketing nerd. Like, you probably know more about cold email than the average person, which is why
I do now. Yeah, I do now.
Yeah. So what works and what doesn't work? Like what kind of offers, I guess, is what I would say. Like, how do you get your foot in the door?
Yeah.
Cold email.
Yeah. So the first thing is you have to be marketing, or you have to be emailing someone who's like in the business of reading and responding to external email, which is like what? But like if you're emailing pharmacists or like doctors or plumbers, it's kind of weird. Or like teachers, they're probably being told not to respond to external email. But if you email like, a sales director, salespeople, owner, founder, CMO, someone that has like a forward-facing role or would normally work with vendors, cold email is probably a good option. And in order to get the most responses, or the best responses, it's all about relevance. So like I mean, I used to, but not anymore. I don't send out an email that says, hey, do you need B2B leads? Like, we'll get you B2B leads, B2B lead gen company, get leads, and just like say lead gen over and over so they, get the point. What we would do is we would email recruiters and we'd be like, hey, are your clients hiring now? Because if they're not, they might as well not even be clients. What if I could get you meetings with hiring managers that are looking for candidates and roles that you staff right now? And then people respond to that because they're like, wow, this human being that like knows what I do sent me an email offering something somewhat enticing, as opposed to like this robot that has no idea what I do, just feature dumped me.
I feel like it's really interesting, and it kind of like a counter to the current entrepreneur culture and marketer culture of like everyone's talking now about content marketing and leading with giving instead of like Gary Vee's thing, jab, 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 right hook. You're just starting with the right hook and you're just punching a bunch of people and hoping that one lands.
Yeah, I have an email formula. We'll take their case study. We'll take a client's case study, and we'll just say, we'll email everybody that looks exactly like the person they worked with. So if they worked with food companies with 11 to 50 employees and they worked with the marketing director, we'll email the other marketing directors at food companies with 11 to 50 employees. It'll be like, hey, if I could prove that I helped another food company generate 60% more revenue in 3 months, would you have 15 minutes to talk about doing it again for you? And that's the entire email campaign. Like, there's a signature, but that's it. There's no follow-ups, like nothing like that. And you get a couple % of people responding, they're paying $10 a lead. It's like a deal. You don't need to do like these lengthy content funnels. Like, I mean, those people are selling you content funnels, right? That's the same reason the cold email automation company is like, no, you need to do a sequence that's 28 days long and, do it on our product with a 14-day free trial. And then after around day 21 is when people will start buying things from you. Are you sure?
Then why isn't your trial 21 days?
Yeah, it's a very specific timeline.
It's interesting. So you don't recommend any follow ups. You just do one blast, and if they don't respond, that's the end.
We'll do 2 or 3 follow-ups, but
Okay.
like tops. But you don't even want to talk to the lead that you had to email 8 times, right?
Yeah, it's true.
They're not that interested.
Do you guys actually, just curious now, this isn't interesting to listeners, but like, do you guys actually still do the content creation and help people like put together their emails?
Sometimes, usually what I have now is I have a bunch of guides, and so I'll get on the discovery call and I'll ask them like, do you have like any case studies? And then they'll tell me about the case study, and I'll help them set up the search so they can get the exact customer match. And then I'll send them a guide. I'll be like, this is how you write a case study or a cold email based on your case study that we're going to send to those people that I just found for you. And then, they usually write a better email than I do at that point because they know what people care about.
So is being a fit for cold email more about the person that you're trying to target than what you're trying to sell? Like, for example, is there specific niches that do really well with cold email, like service industry or SaaS or whatever, versus is it the person, like what you were talking about earlier with someone with an outward facing role?
Dude, I would tell you that, but I've seen people do the craziest things. Like I saw some guy, he showed up and he really wanted to buy lead engines. And I was like, what are you selling? And it was like backpacks with like a dog on them, a picture of a dog. And I was like, dude, this is a B2B product. And he was adamant and he bought it. And then he started emailing like veterinarians and dog trainers. And he got his product out there.
Right on.
Yeah. And I would have told him, I did tell him, I was like, sir, you don't want to do that. And he did it anyway and it worked. Other times, I tell people you definitely want to do this and, maybe it doesn't. But, this time. So
Interesting.
I would tell you that there's definitely some niches that are better than others. Like founders are really easy to get to respond with cold email. And when you start emailing people that are like sitting in a cubicle, just like thinking about what's for lunch, like, they're not going to get excited enough to respond probably.
Right.
But like, dude, founders, especially on like a Sunday, like you're sitting there looking for something to do, looking to tell somebody to do something, and somebody's like hits you up, and why not?
Interesting. Are there any other like? Is that the only way that you've sold lead engines, or referral partners are a big one too? But are those your two main mechanisms, or is there anything else that you use?
We're going really big through channel marketing. So difference between referral marketing and channel marketing. Referral marketing is like other users of your product telling people to go buy your product. And so we had a lot of growth with referral marketing. And channel marketing is what we're going after now. And so that's kind of, we have 17 integrations. So I've spent the last couple months reaching out to the CEOs of all these different companies like Reply.io, Lemlist, Mailshake, Woodpecker. So if you use any of those products, we integrate with it. I've been reaching out to them to set up co-marketing stuff. And my pitch is basically, hey, you sell people a cold email automation software. What's the next thing they need, right? They need a cold email list. What happens if they never put in a cold email list during your free trial? Oh, well, then they cancel because, they didn't use it. Or what happens where they run out of people to email? Like they're done, they're going to cancel. So lead engines, right? We automate the list building. They get new leads every day. It's really easy to set up. You should, anybody that gets a free trial and needs leads, you should send them to us. We'll give them leads. They'll convert on your free trial. And if they stay with us, then they'll stay with you longer because they never run out of leads. So why would they cancel?
Very interesting. Okay. So an equivalent in my industry, I have a web design agency, would be I would go to like other marketing agencies and that maybe do just Facebook ads and be like, hey, when your clients, when they're running Facebook ads to terrible websites, like it's not going to work for you. So, partner with us, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Another question I had for you that I wanted to get to on this call, and let me know if you're running out of time. But another question that I had for you, what are you doing with API Exchange? I saw that link and I didn't know you were associated with it until then.
Oh yeah. So that's my new project.
Okay.
That one's doing a little over like $1,000 MRR. It's my new SaaS.
Okay.
So it's like just getting off the ground. And what API Exchange is a platform where you can take any piece of software and then you can immediately put it up behind an API and start selling paid licenses to people. So if you had a script laying around, for example, that would take someone's, I just made one. It takes their first name, their last name, and the name of the company they work for or used to work for, and it finds their LinkedIn profile. And someone needed a list enriched. So I threw together, this script. It's like 40 lines of code, and I put it on API Exchange, and I sold him access to it. And so I continued to own the software, and he just paid for access. And if you have any piece of software laying around, you can really quickly turn it into an API, put it on API Exchange, start selling it. We handle all the payment processing, rate limits on the accounts, all that stuff. We put it on Zapier. We put it in like Python and Node.js so people can install it with one line. And it's a way to instantly bring your new SaaS product to market. Or if
you are consistent with your principles in business.
I am. And so where the idea actually came from, or I guess the first use of it, I don't know where the idea came from, but the first use of it was someone needed access to some of the software, like the underlying software that we use to build lead engines, right? Remember I explained it's 9 tools, 10 tools integrated together, A to B to C to D. And so they're like, hey, we need like this E to G section. Okay, so, I spin up an endpoint on API Exchange, send them a link, sign up, it's $500 a month. And that covers all my costs for the underlying tools that it's built out of. So I went from having these tools that I was paying money for to build lead engines out of to I'm combining and reselling them on API Exchange, and I'm using them for free.
That's sweet. So is API Exchange something that only you can sell your software on, or is it for anybody who just wants to exchange their APIs?
It's for anybody that has any software laying around in any language. They can really quickly turn it into a hosted API. They can start selling it to anybody. They can deploy it on Zapier. They can deploy it on NPM or PyPy, which is where people get software. Free trials, all that stuff. So if you have any old piece of code laying around that does something cool, might be worth throwing it on API Exchange. It's free except for processing fees.
Wow. Well, I don't know anybody who has quite a philosophy like you do about business, and I really admire it. Are there any other business people or companies that you aspire, look up to or admire? Are there any other people who you think are doing it really well?
I think there's a lot of people that are doing it really well. I would, I don't have a business idol, or I'm not some Grant Cardone fanboy or whatever people are doing these days.
That would be pretty off color for you.
Yeah. I like Elon. I think it's cool that Elon can buy a stock and then he can go on Twitter and say that he bought that stock and then it just goes up because he bought it, And so I wish I could do that. I think that's pretty cool. That would be that would be my job, right?
That's pretty sweet.
But Elon has his own philosophy, right? Go get that, government backing and go in some industry that's, giant world problem and subsidized heavily. And so I think what he's doing is really clever. I think what Bill Gates did with the Microsoft and the user generativity stuff. I don't know if you know anything about the origins of Microsoft.
Nothing.
All right. So long story short, way back in the day before there was Microsoft, there was bunch of different computer manufacturers. They all had their own operating system. And when you made an application, you had to put it on each operating system. So you would have to make it for every single different thing. And it was a huge pain. And so what Bill Gates did is he made Microsoft, and then he made DOS, and all the other manufacturers, computer manufacturers, they would use DOS as their operating system. And then that meant that the people that were building applications only had to build them for DOS. So instead of having to build the software application 100 times to get it on all 100 different types of devices, he created the Common Framework. And the idea...
Kind of similar to Stripe, actually.
It's similar to Stripe, and it's similar to Salesforce.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because when you think about Salesforce, it's $120 a month, and it's really a glorified Google Sheet, right? But it has this massive ecosystem of products that are built into it. And the value of Salesforce comes from, I think, being the ecosystem.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would explain why they're buying everything. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Are there any, just a question that I like to ask people kind of towards the end, are there any books or podcasts or any that you recommend to entrepreneurs, software developers, anyone?
Yeah. I really liked Chaos Monkeys. I forget the name of the author, but it's the story of some guy that created a advertising product, and he sold it either to Twitter and went to Facebook, or he sold it to Facebook and went to Twitter. He went through Y Combinator, And I think it really killed like the glory of the incubator accelerator program for me. Because like I came out of, the university world where it's like the incubator and you go from the college entrepreneurship, to the incubator. And then the incubator, introduces you to the VCs. And really, like, you're working for free to build this business, like, that maybe they'll invest in. And then, like, the college just wants to, like, take photo ops and stuff. And I think, like, I had kind of figured that out, but it wasn't really till I read Chaos Monkeys, till I was like, oh, like, the investor isn't your friend, Like,
Interesting.
Yeah.
So are you like hardcore against taking investments then? Or is it just not the path that was for you?
I'm not hardcore against it. There were reasons that with lead engines, I was skeptical, I guess. And they have actually sort of started to go away. So I may be raising money this year.
Okay.
So I'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah.
I think the plan
definitely.
is like, we'll probably, if I can like maybe double or triple the revenue, then I can do some things that I need to do in order to be ready to raise money.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that later. I definitely want to hear more about it.
Yeah.
But I know that can be sensitive to talk about online.
That one, that one is.
Dude, this has been so cool. Thank you so much for this. I learned so much. I hope the listeners do too. Where can people find you? I know your URLs aren't spelled straightforward. There's a dash in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, so there's always a dash. Maybe there won't be by the time that's developing. But
when you get that VC money.
Yeah, it's lead-engines.com, and engines is plural, and then it's API-exchange.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I also recommend everyone connect with Ryan or follow him on LinkedIn. Definitely my favorite person I follow on LinkedIn.
Which is
very insightful, funny. It's like the first thing I say to you every time we talk.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I believe the LinkedIn is also LinkedIn/in/Ryan-Matonis if you're looking.
You're into hyphens. All right.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you so much, and we'll chat again soon.
All right. Thanks, Max.